Hi everyone, it's Nat Walsh from Cherish Cards. Today I have a card using an older Magnolia stamp. This die I have looked on, I did get it online and I have looked to make sure that it wasn't sort of a rip-off from somewhere, and I can't find anything anywhere. So I decided it was safe to use it. Now this is an older stamp, but we're going to look at more the technique and how to colour other lines rather than the use of this actual stamp. I did find it on eBay and things like that. So I'm going to use this E6000 spray. I just got this at my local Spotlight here in Australia a little while ago, I think, but it does need to have something heavy put on top of it until it sort of sticks down. But it works really, really well and you don't end up with a lot of gunk everywhere. So these are the colours that we're going to use for our lion. Now we're going to add another colour in later on, and we're going to remove some of the other colours in for other parts of our little lion. So I'm going to be using E08, YR24, 21 and YR20 for the majority of the elephant. The elephant, it's not an elephant, it's a lion. I was just looking at the elephant stamp, so that's where my brain was going. Now, really, I could probably have used a YR27 as an in-between, but I didn't have it. So we're going to use what we have, and I'm going to use the tip-to-tip technique and blend out the E08 and YR24. And that helps just to sort of fill in that gap. So I've mapped out my shading with my lighter colour, and I've left a little bit of a highlight underneath his body before his legs have that darker spot. I'm not the world's best for highlighted for colour theory, but I didn't want the legs just blend into the body. I wanted some definition, so I've left what they call as a reflective highlight on the body. And the same sort of thing with his toes. That's why you'll have that line in between, sort of where his toes, where his paws, where his claws, one of those. Here I was trying to figure out what the heck that little bit was. I think it's like his belly sort of thing, but that's what I'm going to go with. So as I said, I wanted some definition, so I left on that middle toe, I've left. See, I get stuck because it's not a toe. It's not a toe, it's a claw, but it's not even that. It's the pad of his feet. Just work with me. Okay. So the middle section, if I had the shadows all around the edges, then the next claws are going to blend in with each other. Okay, so that's why we left that. And the same with his head. So his ears stood out a little bit more. I'm really digging this, lots of strong contrast these days. So this is what I'm into at the moment. And I'm really quite enjoying it. So we're going to work through his little body. On his snout, I got it right. On his snout, we're going to use the lighter colours. So we're going to remove the E08. So we're going to YR24, 21 and 20. Just so they blend in, they're still in unison with it all, but they have that lighter colour. They stand out that little bit more. On the inside of his ears and the very bottom pads of his feet, we're going to use the two lightest colours, and we're going to substitute a bit of an R20 to give it that soft pink sort of look. When we get up to the tail, this is where we get our R20, we'll put that in first and blend it out with the YR20. And then just some definition in the very inners of the ear sort of thing. That would be the very inners of his ear, the YR21. When I get up to it, we're going to do something that for me is a little bit different, but I really like the effect of it. So I'm going to add E18 into the mane, and we're not going to go down quite so low. So our little lion is still going to have that unison through everything, okay? The same sort of colours. We're just going to use shading of it all. So we've got our E18, our E08 and our YR24. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a white gel pen and get it working on my fingers and just put in those lines. When that dries, I'll go over it again with the YR21 just to make it. I didn't quite like it that it was such a strong contrast that sounds weird because I like my strong contrast, but it was a bit too, just stood out a little bit too much. But I thought that if I put the YR21 over the top, and then you'll see for at least some of it, I'll actually go over. There we go. There's our start of our mane. So it's a very subtle sort of highlight to it. I wanted to make sure it dries because I didn't know how it was going to affect my Copic marker, and then I do make sure I wipe it off onto a scrap piece of paper, and I haven't had any problem with doing this. So we're going to go through and do the rest of his mane. I am going to colour off camera the other one, and that's the card that's the eye lion that we're going to use for the first card, because I actually stuffed up his belly. I stuffed up his belly only because, in the sense of the colour, because it was going to I forgot what I used the E18 for, and I added that in later on. Well, no, I didn't. I didn't add that in later on. I added it too early. So we're actually going to use the second lion on the first card and this little baby on our second card. But I decided to stamp it out because I had it there and he was pretty stinking cute. And I decided I needed to do both of them. Very shortly we're going to come up to our nose. We're just going over our white gel marker, and see I've rubbed it off and I've got no problem. So we've got our 100, a C9, C7 and C5. I do go back in with the contrast, and I was going to think about leaving it with a gel. We're going to get this right sooner or later. The gel pen, but I decided I didn't like it. So I'll go over that again in the C5. I hope you can't hear my husband clunking around in the kitchen. COVID 2020 problems. I'm going to cut these out. Now, I'm not going to worry about his little whiskers. You'll see why I'll do that in a minute. I've got a water-based marker. This is just a Stampin' Up one, but you could use the Tim Holtz Ground Espresso. You could do whatever you so wish. Just so it just adds that little finishing touches to our little lion to make him look more finished off and not just plain cut out. So we've now got, I didn't show you these colours, but we've got YG 99, 97 and 95. And this is how I'm going to colour the whole thing. With picking out the leaves, darkest in the middle and working my way out to the lightest. And I'm slapping the colour down. With the bigger open leaves, nearly said it again, did you see that? I use the side of the marker because I don't want to damage my tip. And around the inner oval, you can see there's a frame. I'm just going to use a lighter colour. So I'm mostly going to do that off because we're going to try and do 2 cards here. And so I really, really wanted it to not go for too long. But that's how I'm going to colour him in. So remember, it's already glued. This is going to be our rock. Now I've just cut a rock shape. I'm going to E49, 47, 45 and 43 for our rock, and we're going to use just a stippling technique. I've sort of estimated where I think my little dude might be, and I'm going to try and give my rock a little bit of texture. I will go down, come back in later, and we'll go down a little bit lower because he just seemed to be a little bit floating in air, although you're not really going to see it because it's going to be behind the leafy frame. So, but I know, and I just couldn't do it. So we work with the darkest using a light hand, and not that you can really, it's hard to sort of tell at this point, but I'm working my way from darkest down to the lightest, and now with the lightest I'm just going to go straight over the top. So you'll see that he looks a little bit too floating up in the air, I think. Yep. So he needs to come down because his back legs were sort of hanging off the air. You're not really going to see it too much behind the leafy frame, but you know, I think you're going to see it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's in my head that you're going to see it. So we finished off our little rock here. I'm going to cut the very top off our card base because this is an Aussie C6 card base, and card front, I should say. And this die is not Aussie branded. A little bit of Stormy Sky just sponged over the background to give him a little bit of texture. I probably could have gone through the whole thing, but I wanted it just nice and soft. So I've left, now I'm going to do this twice because I couldn't remember whether I put the card right into the center when I took out everything to take the mat out. So we're going to do it again. I'm going to hold it there where I wanted it placed and roughly put, using elements of the stamp. So his tail and the very tip of his mane, they stand out on the stamp. You can sort of see it there on the top. And that's how I'm going to use it to match up where he is. But I'm not freaking out about it. We're just going to put it on there. So a bit of glue for our rock and a little bit of glue for our lion. And we have our whiskers back. It's like, oh, our whiskers are magically back. A bit of the E6000 again for the back of our stencil, back of our die. And I'm going to put my Misty on top of that while it dries. Something nice and heavy there. Next, we've got this paper rose. It's called, I've got to find it, Paper Rose Spotty Line Square. Now, it doesn't cut out the actual square. It sort of cuts out the inside of your card front. Okay, so you can see it down there in the right hand corner. So I've cut it out, and I don't know, I just like the way it sort of gave me a little jungle look without making too much sort of problems with trying to, it was a quick and easy cut, okay? It was a quick and easy cut. So we've got this Doolittle Bug All Occasions stamp. And we're going to use hello for this card. And I wasn't too sure about the first card, so I ended up using a just because the lion looks a little bit sad sack, and I couldn't quite figure out what to do. It wasn't a welcome, it wasn't a happy birthday, it was, so we're going to use it just because. Now our stamp is still in the bottom for the hello, so we're going to use the top of our Misty. Make sure it's all lined up there. Stamp it out with some, I forgot what I used, rich cocoa. We use the rich cocoa as well again. And the same with our hello. We're going to mount up our second little line with some foam dots. Plop him down. Using the bottom of the die, the spotty line die as sort of our grounding for him, and he's done. I'm going to put a little bit of Wink and Stella, and that's it. So there's going to be a blog post down below with all this information, my colours and everything else. I'd really love it if you liked and subscribed this video. Hit the little bell and you get notified next time I do a video. Thanks for stopping by. Goodbye.